Once a territory of France, Missouri is dotted with French names we consistently mispronounce, like the city of Versailles. Yes, it's pronounced Versailles, not Versailles. I'm from Missouri and even I have a hard time with this. Missouri is known for jazz, barbecue, cattle, baseball, and outlaw Jesse James. It's a mid-sized state and has the 18th densest population. Famous residents include President Harry Truman, journalist Walter Cronkite, actors Don Cheadle and Brad Pitt, musician Chuck Berry, baseball great Yogi Berra, Casey Jones, yeah, the railroad guy, General John Blackjack Pershing, botanist George Washington Carver, astronomer Edwin Hubble, and authors T.S. Eliot and Mark freaking Twain. Covered by plains, hills, forests, and river bottoms, Missouri is as diverse with its geography as it is with culture. From the arts in Kansas City, yes, it's in Missouri, to the food in Street Louie, and all the rural tractor shows in between, Missouri is home to all types of polite people. This is the Midwest, after all, and to some monsters. Like space penguins. We can't forget space penguins. The mushroom was out of place. It was also green, metal, and enormous. Farmer Claude Edwards found the metallic mushroom in a field on Street Valentine's Day 1967, and went to investigate. At the base of the structure were a number of creatures, about 3 feet tall, that resembled green waddling penguins with large, black eyes. Acting like any rational, evolved human, he armed himself with rocks and heaved the Stone Age tools toward the ship. However, Edwards and his rocks ran into a force field about 15 feet from the craft that kept him away from the penguins. The whole thing took over 5 minutes, maybe 10. Edwards told the press about his encounter with the mushroom. "I've never seen anything like it. It looked like shiny silk or something. Couldn't tell. I was going to tell though if I could have hit it with that rock." Apparently agitated by Edwards' aggressive behavior, the penguins floated into their mushroom and took off into the sky. Sightings of the Missouri Monster, Momo for short, began near the small town of Louisiana, Missouri, in the mid-1900s, but it wasn't until a spate of encounters in the early 1970s that this 7-foot-tall, hairy biped got national attention. The first major sighting occurred in 1971 when Joan Mills and Mary Ryan were picnicking north of town and smelled something awful. "We were eating lunch," Ryan told the press. "We both wrinkled up our noses at the same time. I never smelled anything as bad in my life." Thinking they'd roused a family of skunks, the young women considered abandoning their picnic. What they saw next made them sure of it. A monster was watching them. It had hair over the body as if it was an ape, Ryan told the press. Yet the face was definitely human. It was more like a hairy human. The beast lurched from the bushes and stepped toward the women. They screamed, ran to their car, and locked the doors. As the monster tried to get into the car, the women realized the extent of the danger they were in. Mills' keys were in her purse that sat on their picnic blanket down the hill. Sitting in the car in a panic, Mills accidentally bumped the car horn, and the monster ran off, but not before eating their sandwiches. The next Momo sighting occurred on July 11, 1972. As 8-year-old Terry Harrison and his 5-year-old brother Wally played outside their home below Marzolf Hill, the boys felt something wasn't right. Terry looked toward the trees and saw an enormous creature covered in long black hair staring at them. He screamed, and his sister Doris, 15, who was inside the house, looked out the window to see something out of a nightmare. It was 6 or 7 feet tall, black and hairy. It stood like a man, but it didn't look like one to me, she told newspaper reporters, according to the Street Louie Riverfront Times. The creature, that seemed to have no neck, fled from the screaming child, carrying a bloody dog in the crook of a muscular, hairy arm. When their father Edgar returned home, the monster was long gone, but he found giant footprints and strange black hair stuck to the tree where his children had seen the creature. The encounters at the Harrison house continued. 3 days later, during a prayer meeting, the prayer group heard unearthly howls and growls in the darkness, forcing the members to flee in terror. By now, stories of the creature had spread over town. According to the Riverfront Times, Louisiana man Pat Howard saw the creature running across the road near the Harrison property. Soon after, Illis Minor, who lived north of Louisiana, shined a flashlight into the tree surrounding his home after his dog started barking. He saw the monster. I couldn't see its eyes or face. It had hair down bout to its hind parts, Minor told a UPI reporter. As soon as I threw the light on it, it whirled and took off that away. Sightings continued, and posses were formed to hunt the creature, but to no avail. The Missouri Monster remains a mystery. Newspapers in the 1800s were rife with fanciful stories of giants and monsters, such as this creature story from the September 19, 1895 edition of the Hardin Independent, of Hardin, Iowa, describing a monster in a lake near St. Joseph, Missouri. Wild story from western Missouri started by a fisherman. The serpent in Mud Lake, south of the city, has been seen again, this time by Anderson McCoy, a brother of policeman McCoy. The serpent has been seen a number of times during the past summer, and several times it has been caught in nets by fishermen, but broke through the nets, leaving a hole large enough for a horse to pass through. The fishermen have never been able to land it. McCoy has a strong boat which he uses to hunt ducks on the lake in the season when they are plentiful there. He was out in this boat a few days ago when something struck it, and he declares it was knocked 10 feet into the air. When the boat came down again, McCoy saw the serpent swirling in the water a short distance away. He could not see its size or shape, but saw enough of it to know that it was of huge size. His brother's boats have been struck a number of times, but no injury resulted. The fishermen at the lake are considerably excited about the presence of such a mysterious object in the water. McCoy thinks it is a large fish that got into the lake from the river when the water was high. According to the book Hidden Animals, a field guide to bat squatch, chupacabra, and other elusive creatures, by Michael Newton, in 1857, passengers on a steamboat traveling up the Missouri River saw a great undulating serpent in the sky that breathed fire. Other accounts of dragons stretch back to American Indian folklore include the Piasa bird described in 1836 by Professor John Russell of Shirtliff College in Upper Alton, Illinois. According to Russell's work, The Tradition of the Piasa, the monster began to attack local Indians after feasting off the spoils of war had given it a taste for human flesh. The dragon was later slain by an Indian warrior. The Piasa is a winged creature with green scales, horns, and a long tail that is said to either live in the rocky crags above the Mississippi River Valley, or in a whirlpool in the river itself. Stories of gigantic human skeletons crop up all across North America. One such giant story is from Missouri. On April 9, 1885, the New York Times published the article Missouri's Buried City, that chronicled the discovery in a coal mine underneath the city of Moberly of an enormous ancient city. What thrilled the explorers was the size of the city's former inhabitants. Here's an excerpt. But the curiosity was the skeleton. Mr. Morehouse, who had a tape line with him, measured the bones of the leg. The femur measured 4.5 feet, and the tibia 4 feet and 3 inches, showing that the creature, when alive, must have been endowed with both muscular power and quick action. The head bones had in 2 places separated, the sagittal and the coronal sutures having been destroyed. The party judged, from the best information to be obtained on so a short time, that the skeleton is about 3 times as large as that of an average man, but they were afraid to attempt its removal this morning with the poor appliances at hand. Consequently, it was left where found, to be removed at the earliest hour that the work can be done. Unfortunately, that's the last the world heard of the Missouri Giants.